Hey guys, welcome to the Student Side Hustle. So in this show, what we're trying to do is I'm trying to share stories of individuals and people who generally are doing something unique, doing something entrepreneurial, doing something that they're passionate about and trying to make it their career. That's not necessarily the thing that allows you to be on the show or qualifies you to be a guest on the show, but that's generally what we're talking about. We're talking about entrepreneurship, passion, etc. A lot of it revolves around bodybuilding and fitness because that's what I'm personally interested in. But what I want you to take away from this is just the fact that you can do whichever passion that you'd like to do, and you can make that into a career. It's a long path, but you can make it happen. And basically what I'm doing is showing you 80 plus examples of people who are doing it and who have done it. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I would love if you would subscribe because we've got a lot of new episodes coming out. And yeah, thank you so much for listening.
People are constantly raising the bar.
Sacrifices need to be made.
What would you guys say are your biggest weaknesses?
You are your enemy right now.
It's success of life.
Just a fucking podcast. Hey guys, welcome to the Student Side Hustle. This week I'm speaking to Eric Trexler. So Eric Trexler has his PhD in human movement science, focusing in exercise nutrition and performance. He also is the Stronger by Science Director of Education. He is a natural bodybuilding pro in the American Natural Bodybuilding Federation, and he's also a USAPL powerlifter. So, Eric, how did you get into this, and how did this all start?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me.
My pleasure.
I guess it probably all started when I was 12. Growing up, I grew up in Ohio, over in the United States, and in Ohio, wrestling and football, American football, obviously, are very popular sports. So I started getting into sports, and around the age of 12, I realized I'm naturally not that good at this stuff. So if I don't start training, I'm not going to have a very good time playing these sports. So I started training just so I would be a more competitive football player and wrestler. And I really got into the training like right away. So even at the age of 12, I was hitting the weights consistently, really, really focused in on my training. And by the time I was like 14 or 15, it was like one of those things that all my buddies would make fun of me because I was so into training. And once I started doing it, I kept doing it, kept getting more interested. Wrestling got me really involved with sports nutrition because we had to manipulate our body weight to make weight and things like that. And yeah, by the time I was 18, I was, my one coach for my wrestling team really took me under his wing. His name's Richie Minner, really, really good guy. And we would train together consistently while the team was doing other stuff. And we were kind of just talking about life in general. He was like, what are you going to do? Like, you're coming up on your senior year or whatever. I think I was like 17 or 18. What are you going to study in college? You're going to go to college. What do you want to do? And I was a little uncertain, and he kind of told me, listen, whatever you choose to do, you're probably going to spend about 40 years doing it. So you probably ought to pick something that you enjoy doing every day and not let money be the only thing determining that. And I told him, I was like, well, I just kind of want to hang out in the weight room all day and talk about like supplements and diets and training and stuff. So that seemed like a stupid answer at the time, but I went to college, studied exercise science, did a master's in exercise science, did a PhD, and now I'm working with Stronger by Science, and I pretty much, hang out, talk about nutrition, talk about training, and yeah, it kind of worked out that way.
And how did you like? It's sort of I guess for most people they don't really know at 12. They're not like, okay, I want to do research in bodybuilding. Pretty much, it's like that is quite a sort of unique thing, which is quite cool. It's like it's the kind of thing where I didn't know I wanted to get into this sort of thing until I was like 19 or something, 18 maybe. Like it's the kind of thing where I think it's quite interesting how you sort of knew at quite a young age. Do you think? What age did you know this would sort of be the thing you do for the rest of your life, and then how did you know when to go down the sort of more entrepreneurial aspect of it?
Yeah. So no one knows what they're doing when they're 12 or 15 or whatever. I just knew that I I was most engaged and interested and excited when I was doing things that related to training and nutrition. So I went to college thinking, well, I'll do physical therapy that's kind of close enough. And this is actually maybe more of a story than you bargained for, but I was really into training and wanted to do a bodybuilding competition. But, you know, you're kind of never ready in your own mind to do your first one.
Yeah.
So, like, you know, you'll be like, well, once my legs get bigger, I'll compete. And then your legs get bigger. Then you're like, oh, but now my chest is kind of behind everything else. So I'll build up my chest first. And it's like a never ending cycle. Nothing's ever ready. And one day I was walking home from the gym in college, and I actually was walking across the street and I got hit by a car.
Oh, shit.
Totally my fault. It was ridiculous. Totally my fault. And luckily, you know, I don't really understand how, but no real harm done. Like my hand kind of hurt and that was about it. Was still in the gym a day or two later, no big deal. But it really, like, you know, kind of woke me up and was like, hey, you're healthy now. You're kind of an idiot. So you're probably going to get hurt doing something stupid soon anyway. So, like, you might as well compete now because you're not hurt, you're not sick, you're healthy enough to do it. Just, you know, cut down and do a bodybuilding show and see what it's all about. So yeah, that was like when I was about 20-ish, give or take. And so I did a bodybuilding competition, totally fell in love with the process. And that was when I knew realistically, I don't want to spend a whole lot of my life doing things too far away from this. So I pretty much decided then and there to really consider, instead of using exercise science as a way to get to physical therapy, what if I really went all in on exercise science? So I started getting involved in research, and the research was really enjoyable. In grad school, I found out that I didn't just like research, but even more specifically, I really like doing statistics. And I don't claim to be phenomenal at it. I just really like it and was willing to do a whole lot of additional learning on the side to make sure I was doing the statistics well and appropriately.
Yes.
And so I think that's another factor. It's finding something that, you know, the idea of like when you know it's for you, it's like finding something that is exciting, but also finding an area within that where you love doing something that everyone else hates. So like, that's what, like, if you're good at something that everyone else sucks at, or you love something that everyone else hates, you've officially found your niche. Like, that's your spot.
Yeah.
And so what I found was I loved training, and the training got me really into research. And then once I was in the research, I realized that I loved doing parts that other people didn't like. And so that's when you kind of know you've got a little area where you're comfortable and you're kind of thriving. So, you know, with research in our field, pretty much every research project is going to need some kind of statistical analysis. So, I mean, I was just loving it. I was doing stats all day. I was training. I was, you know, in the bodybuilding world. I was able to do some projects actually doing research on specifically bodybuilding, which is pretty crazy. There's not a lot of opportunities to do that. So I kind of stumbled into this situation where I was really loving what I was doing. It was a lot of work, but it's the kind of work you didn't want to put it down, you know?
Yes.
So then, you know, your other question was that's how I kind of knew I was in the right area, but then why go the more entrepreneurial route rather than, you know, just like a pure professor job? And the reality is both options were on the table. And it kind of went all the way back to that, you know, conversation in the gym with the old coach. It was like, well, how do you want to actually spend your day? Because you could go your own route, and then everything you do pretty much every day is you're doing it because you think it's important, and you're doing it because you think it's a valuable way to spend your time. And all of your projects are basically passion projects. Versus there's certainly positive things about going the other route. You know, going the professor route would have been a more structured position, a lot more comfort for sure. But yeah, I kind of just looked at my life, how I wanted to spend my day, and where I was at in my life. You know, so I don't have a wife, I don't have kids, I don't have anyone financially dependent on. I want to take a more entrepreneurial approach. The only person that's getting hurt there is me if I totally suck at it.
Right.
So the professor job at this phase in my life offered a level of stability that I really wasn't that adamant about getting yet. There might be a time in my life where that stability means a lot more to me, and I could certainly be quite happy in that role. But for now, I just was like, hey, this looks like a fun opportunity. I'm going to go ahead and try it. And I might end up back in the academic world someday. I mean, right now I'm basically, there's a lab group that I'm helping out, and I basically help them plan their studies, help them run their statistics. And so in that sense, I still am able to do the parts of the academic work that I really enjoy, but also pursue some entrepreneurial stuff. And if I totally fall flat on my face, I'll always know that if I go back to being, an academic working as a professor, I'm still going to be really happy.
Yeah.
So it'll be fine.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think it's quite good because you've sort of picked the best bit of the best stuff that you like. And then even if this doesn't work out, okay, now the backup plan is still pretty damn good. So it's like, yeah, it's pretty, it sort of shows the power of like going all in on one thing. It's like, okay, you've pretty much chosen exercise science, you've gone all in on exercise science. And I think that's something that we greatly underestimate. Like people always want to be, I want to do a degree in business and marketing or whatever. And then it's like you're spreading yourself sort of thin. And yeah, it's the kind of thing where I think especially, and you see it with a lot of people in exercise science, as you see them, they are like the person on X topic. And it's like that thing I think is so valuable. And I think you've become that person quite a lot with sort of supplements and especially all that sort of stuff. How and why did that sort of come into play? And yeah, how did supplements and sort of all that become the thing?
Yeah, I would say there was really kind of two areas of research that I really enjoyed the most. One was the kind of body composition and even bodybuilding focus projects. And it's probably pretty obvious why those were kind of high on the list, right? Like bodybuilding really solidified my interest in research. So obviously if you have a chance to research that stuff, you're going to love it.
Yeah.
The supplement stuff, I mean, I was interested in supplements at a young age. I started lifting at 12, and yeah, even as a teenager, I was taking a lot of supplements, and in hindsight, a lot of them were very bad purchases that, I was taking stuff that like, it was harmless, but it just wasn't doing anything for me. But at the time, they were kind of the hot things on the market. So yeah, it's funny because even though I'm like relatively young, I remember when protein shakes were horrible. I mean, they tasted so bad. And like now you'll do a study on a protein supplement and the subjects will be like, oh, this tastes terrible. I can't believe you're making me drink this. And I'm like, dude, you should have done this study in like 2006 or 2004. Like if you wanted a bad protein shake, we'd have to get in a time machine. Because the stuff now is incredible. I mean, the texture, the flavor. But no, I mean, I was into supplements all the way back. And I remember in undergrad, I would, this is ages ago, but I would try to make my own like little pre-workout blend, and get like a nitric oxide booster and some caffeine and some creatine and all this other stuff. And it tasted horrible. So like I would just get all the raw ingredients and try to mix them. And I think particularly the branched chain amino acids and the arginine that I had were horrible flavored. They were unflavored, but they tasted really bad. And so I used to always play this trick on my roommate where he was pretty into lifting too. And so I'd be like, hey man, good news. I got the formula. I got it hammered out. Everything's good. I got the flavor thing fixed. Just come try it. And he'd come try it. And it would be as bad as it used to be. And he would get all upset. But every now and then I could trick him into trying it and it'd be horrible. But it was, at the time a decent blend, but the flavor was just horrible, absolutely terrible. So yeah, the supplement thing was, again, it was like a thing that it was almost like a hobby. I was just really interested in them and always thought it would be cool to have the opportunity to study them. And one thing you mentioned earlier was like the idea that, being a professor was like the kind of backup plan. And I kind of don't really view it that way. For me, I was like, when I came out of the PhD, I was like I mentioned, I'm young, got a lot of ideas, don't have any real, nobody's really depending on me, so it's okay to take a chance. But I would imagine at some point in my life, I'll have that itch again. You know, like with supplements, it was a hobby, and I was like, yeah, but I wish I was in a lab where I could really study these. There's a very high probability that later in my life, when I am looking for something more stable and I want a lab where I can actually start doing some of my own investigations, there might be a time that I drift back into it, because that's what got me into this in the first place. Is you can do your experimentation on your own, but if you don't have the facilities and the infrastructure to actually run studies, you're very limited in how much you can kind of interact with that hobby. So someday I might have that itch again, but that's really, that's what got me into the supplements, was just doing my own kind of at-home experimentation and saying, well, it'd be cool if I could do this in a more thorough manner, where I could make real, legitimate conclusions.
Yeah. And then in terms of the supplements, there's a lot of supplements that I think have been covered fantastically. Like, for instance, creatine. We won't cover creatine today because I think it's been crushed. It's a fantastic supplement. Everyone uses it. Would you generally agree with that?
Yeah, actually, I just wrote a huge article on our website, strongerbyscience.com.
Yep.
And it's actually funny you put it that way, because it's called like something like Not Another Boring Creatine Article. So we basically said we're going to start this article with the assumption, yes, creatine's good for performance and it's safe. Now let's get into the details. So we talked about some of the other things about creatine, how creatine affects bone, does creatine cause hair loss? Some of the things that always come up. But yeah, in terms of the general premise, creatine's pretty effective and very low risk and cheap.
Should we run with that general premise? And then was there anything that you found when writing that article that you sort of thought, oh shit, people should probably know about that, or that's something people didn't know that is quite significant, or?
There's both sides of that. So one thing that people often talk about that I think is a little bit overplayed is the potential link between creatine and hair loss. I know people worry about it a lot. There's only one study really looking at anything related to it, and I think when you take a closer look at that data, it's not as definitive as some people might think. So like there's like this big percent increase in something called DHT, which is a hormone associated with hair loss. But even with that 50% increase, the value still stayed very well within a normal range. And to be honest, the measurement taken at baseline was a little lower than you would expect.
Right.
And so you almost kind of wonder how much, like, the question is not how did it increase 50%, but my question is more, how was it so low at baseline?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So so that was one thing that came up, is that I think people overstate the likelihood, or at least the certainty of the conclusion that creatine is linked with hair loss.
Yes.
Now we can't rule it out. We can't rule it out completely, because that's still quite an intriguing finding, and I thought the researchers did an excellent job on the study. But we just need more. We just don't know.
Yeah. It's definitely
One thing I found while doing the research for the article was there's actually a lot of rodent research suggesting that creatine might not be great for rodents with asthma.
Do you think that would have a application to humans, or?
So the thing is, they have these rodent models that they use to approximate asthma.
Right.
So that they basically say, well, we're going to induce this asthma-like condition in these rodents and study interventions, hoping that we can one day translate it to humans. And obviously depending on what you're studying, there can be a large leap of faith regarding how well something is going to translate out of that model. And different animals are actually different. They're good models for different things, So like, I remember talking to somebody, they said like anything kind of gastrointestinal related, pigs are a pretty good model. Rodents have a lot of application for a lot of things. So I've never done animal research, so I don't pretend to be an expert on that. But it is interesting that there was, some findings that in these rodent models of asthma that creatine was, it wasn't devastating, but it actually did exacerbate the symptoms a little bit. And it was such a kind of an effect that was taken as such a kind of fact that there were even follow-up papers that said aerobic exercise eliminates the negative effect of creatine on the lung.
What?
So like, yeah, it was like the type of conclusion that they would feel comfortable just saying, so we're going to assume that in the title, and here's the premise of our study.
Because that's
So
pretty, like, especially for research, that's a pretty, like, aggressive title. Like,
it's pretty bold. Yeah, yeah. It's like, yeah, they're not like tiptoeing out there saying, well, there might be a negative. It's like, no, so there's this negative impact, and here's what aerobic exercise does to it. Now, the thing is, I've never seen anything in humans about creatine and asthma. It's not something I've gone super deep into. I just, while writing the article, I was like, well, here's an aspect that I've never really heard brought up. So, does that translate to humans? Frankly, I don't know. I've never heard of a person with asthma saying, yeah, I tried creatine and I never touched the stuff. But if I did have asthma, I think it would be at least worth considering, know?
Yeah, that's the thing. But I think it's all obviously hard to draw conclusions. But one supplement
definitely.
I would love to talk about is, and this is something I've been using for ever since I started to make my own pre-workout, like citrulline malate. I've basically, I love the shit. Maybe it's placebo, maybe it's not. What are your general thoughts on it? Do you think, should it have a place for most people? Is it the kind of thing where you think, okay, and let me know your thoughts on this. The vasodilation effects combined with the vasoconstriction effects of caffeine, does that balance out, or is one obviously more powerful than the other? Or
well, yeah. So citrulline malate, I'll start there. I mentioned my old, terrible, bad-tasting formula in college. I should have been using citrulline malate instead of arginine. That's one of the very easy swaps I would make with the gift of hindsight. Citrulline malate, we just published a meta-analysis on it, and there have been papers coming out saying that citrulline malate helps with high-intensity exercise. There's been a few studies saying it doesn't seem to do much at all. But overall, what you find if you try to, summarize the literature is a small but not negligible effect, particularly when it comes to something like repetitions to fatigue. So yeah, I think, whenever a supplement comes along in the strength world, the question is kind of always, is it the next creatine? So like when beta alanine came around, people were like, is this the next creatine? Probably not, and then when citrulline malate came around, I think, there was a couple of really nice studies showing, hey, this does something. The body of literature is very young. So like almost all of the relevant studies have come out basically since like 2014 or 2015. So this body of literature is bound to grow a lot. But I think, is citrulline malate the next creatine? No. I'm pretty comfortable saying that. But I do think that the effects we see with it are quite similar to what we would expect in terms of magnitude as something like beta alanine or caffeine when it comes to resistance training outcomes. So I have it on my short list of supplements that you could really make a good justification for including them if you're a strength or physique oriented trainee. It's not on creatine's tier, but it's definitely on that second tier of supplements that are worth looking into. Now, when it comes to caffeine, the issue with caffeine is that, it affects, it has discrepant effects in different tissues of the body. I've never gotten too worked up looking at the vasoconstriction and vasodilation associated with caffeine. For me, what I have always looked at is, does caffeine have a role in terms of performance outcomes? And the answer, I think, would be it has either a negligible or positive effect when it comes to strength and power. The endurance outcomes are very reliable. The sprint stuff is a little less so, and then the strength training's a little hit or miss when you look at, if there's 10 papers on caffeine, how many of them show a benefit? So there's something there. I think different people respond very differently to caffeine, and some studies have actually shown that could be linked to the genes that code for the CYP1A2 enzyme that's responsible for caffeine metabolism. So I've never gotten too worried about that, because what we know is that caffeine does have this role when it comes to the acute performance outcomes, which would indicate it's probably worth giving it a shot. And we also have seen studies showing that when we have a multi-ingredient formula with nitric oxide boosters and caffeine, we still do see that kind of vasodilatory effect.
Right.
So when you consider once people actually start training, especially if you have a vasodilator in that mix, which often there is if you're taking like a pre-workout, we're talking about a very, even if there is a vasoconstrictive element, it's probably not going to do much when you look at the overall effects in terms of how much exercise increases blood flow, and then even on top of that, if you have a nitric oxide booster.
Right. Yes. And then one thing you did note is the genotypes. In terms of this, how would you identify? 'Cause I think it was you on the TSA podcast. They were talking about caffeine. They're talking about genotypes, and then also how do you know which one you are? So if we use myself as an example, I can drink like just a fuck ton of caffeine, and I barely feel it. Sometimes I'll feel it, but like if I have a Monster on an empty stomach, I'll probably feel something. But it's like, for the most part, I think my tolerance is relatively high. I can have 300 to 400 milligrams and not see. It's not like night and day. It's sort of like, oh yeah, I can kind of feel that. Would that be classed? Just from that, would I be able to assume my sort of reaction to caffeine and my genotype, or?
Well, it's tough because there are factors. How rapidly can you metabolize it is essentially what we're trying to assess. That's kind of what we're trying to find a proxy for. Because the idea would be, if you're a fast metabolizer, then you're going to clear it pretty quick. The thing that's tricky is now when you include habituation. So if you're a habitual caffeine user,
yes,
that's probably going to alter your perception of how dramatic your response to caffeine is. I think if you want to get kind of a blunt idea, there's maybe a possibility that you could use things like, I believe slow metabolizers tend to have a lot more of the unwanted effects of caffeine in terms of feeling anxious or jittery when they consume it. I think if you are a person who, if you have caffeine, like a reasonable amount of caffeine early in the day, and you really struggle to get to sleep at night, that might have some kind of indication that you are indeed metabolizing it pretty slowly. But I do think these are all pretty blunt ways to try to make an assessment. If you really wanted to have confidence, you'd probably want to rely on an actual genetic test. They do some. I mentioned on the podcast that they are available at I think pretty reasonable or like pretty affordable prices. I've never looked into it, but to do it myself. But you could do that, but then you have to decide how comfortable you are giving another person your DNA to test. People have different levels of paranoia with regard to that.
Right.
But my thing with the testing, and I've talked to Greg Knuckles about this, because he and I, we work together and we drink a ton of caffeine. It's like, even if we're slow metabolizers, which is not ideal, you want to be a fast metabolizer. Fast metabolizers likely to have better long-term outcomes when it comes to cardiovascular risk, performance outcomes in response to caffeine. Again, the literature on that is very, it's just starting to form. So these are very tentative conclusions. But right now it seems like you would want to be a fast metabolizer. But Greg and I are both like, even if I'm slow, there's no way that I'm gonna stop consuming caffeine. Like, it's just like, oh, my life might a cardiac event. That's fine, but I'll be happy while I'm here, you know?
Yeah.
So, that's another thing to keep in mind is like if you want to go the genetic testing route, I always like you don't test something, in my opinion, if you don't intend to act upon it.
Yeah,
Like
I agree. Like if I
it's just gonna stress you out probably.
yeah, like there was a while ago where I just have like a jug of black coffee, and I was noticing I started to get heart palpitations. And it's like I was like, that's not the best thing. Do you think like I definitely found and also I went to the doctor because I was having what was it? I think this is a completely unrelated different condition, possibly, not sure though. I don't get the heart like it's a atrial flutter. I don't get that anymore. That might be the wrong term. I feel like that's the wrong term. If that's really severe, that's the wrong term. It's like something that's just an interesting thing that doesn't really matter, but it's probably due to too much caffeine. But I also
This is
found
this is a good time for me to jump in and say that nothing that I say should be perceived as medical advice. If you have atrial fluttering, speak to a physician immediately. All right, as you can continue.
okay. And then I noticed it would be with caffeine or recently without. I thought it was due to the caffeine, but I would say if I'd bend over to pick up a dumbbell and it's sort of like if you do an RDL and you go really, really deep and your torso goes below the line of your pelvis. Does that make sense? Yeah. Sometimes I would do that and then I'd come back up and my heart it all of a sudden would skyrocket to 210 beats per minute. So,
Whoa.
Yeah, it's pretty, and it would, one time it stayed there for 9 minutes and I was just sitting there like, what the fuck is going on? It's commonly been in the gym, but I feel like that's just a place where I bend over and then pick it up. And then one time I did it at my locker, and it happened for 20 seconds and it stopped. So then I'm probably going to get that checked out because,
It wouldn't hurt. It wouldn't hurt to get that checked out.
Yeah. I mean, I've already had an ECG and they said everything was fine, but this is a different issue. Oh, no, I think it might have actually been for that issue. But then they said it was fine, so I was like, okay, maybe I'll get it checked out by someone else as well. Just didn't get two opinions, but yeah.
Yeah, and don't go to somebody who did their PhD in exercise science. Go see a cardiologist, man.
Yeah, I agree. Also, anything, what do you say? Anything I say is not a medical advice. Go see a physician.
No.
Go see a physician.
Yeah, I have no useful advice to give on anything.
Okay. And also, what are your thoughts when it comes to theanine and tyrosine in relation to caffeine?
That is so crazy that you asked that. I actually just started taking theanine and tyrosine a week ago.
Right.
That is crazy. I had read into it and I was like, okay, this looks interesting. And so far, I'm trying to cautiously guard myself from any kind of placebo effect.
Yes.
But so far have been pleasantly surprised. I've been taking 200 milligrams of theanine with my morning coffee and I think 1,000 milligrams of tyrosine. And I have found that I think especially the theanine is really, really quite effective at preventing the kind of, if you tend to get a little bit hyped up and lose focus or get a little jittery with caffeine. I definitely think that stacking the theanine with the tyrosine, or the theanine and the tyrosine with the caffeine, so far I'm actually pleasantly surprised. It seems to be quite a nice stack. So I reserve judgment until I kind of feel it's only been, like I said, about a week. But I was expecting a lot less. I'm usually quite skeptical, and I'm usually pretty. Sometimes I have the anti-placebo effect.
Right.
If I take a supplement, I'm like, this thing better really surprise me with being incredibly effective. And so if it's not in an enormous effect, I'm like, that didn't work.
Yeah.
So I'm usually not one to get totally suckered in with placebo effects, and I think it's a pretty solid combination.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I haven't tried the tyrosine yet, but I'm finding the theanine is working relatively well. And yeah, I'm definitely. Did you buy tyrosine in capsules? Because I find whenever you buy in capsules, it seems to be very, very expensive. It's like $46 for like 100 capsules, and you need like a 1 gram or 1,000 milligrams. It's like it's pretty expensive. Do you find it?
I bought mine in capsule form.
Yeah. Maybe it's different where you live, but it's like it's so expensive here. I'm in New Zealand. So.
Yeah, yeah. Don't aren't Pop Tarts like $30,000 out there? Like I think things are
If
just
we have them.
different.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember. So I was like going into this as like a trial run, so I didn't buy like very large amounts of any of them.
Yes.
So I remember, the prices. If something's more expensive or less expensive, it doesn't really jump out too much until it's like a huge supply of it.
Yeah.
So I kind of expect if you're going to go get a thing of supplements, you're thinking it's probably going to be at least $10 and hopefully
Yeah.
not more than 30.
Yeah.
And so if it's in there, it doesn't really like surprise me. But I don't remember it being super expensive.
Yeah. Maybe it's just New Zealand and isolation from civilization. But yeah.
It might be.
One thing I
I don't
would
know.
like to
I'd have to go check.
yeah, that's the thing. I'm probably just gonna get some from like My Protein or some shit because that seems to be the cheapest place where like we can get stuff.
Yeah.
Also, and so one thing I'd like to touch on is I'd love your thoughts on, and this is hopefully what I'd be doing my PhD on if it actually has some grounds for. And I mean that's a long way away, so I'm talking very tentatively there, but because I'm still doing my undergrad, so I'm in my third year of my undergrad in podiatry. So then I'm gonna do exercise science next year. So it's a very, very weird combination, but we'll see how we go. But what would be your general thoughts on generally hypertrophy for health, and that means more like general population health?
Yeah, I mean, and by the way, you're allowed to say this is a thing I'm thinking about doing my PhD on. You don't have to you don't have to humble yourself so aggressively. It's okay to have ambitions about saying, hey, this is a thing I'd like to study and I'm thinking about it quite seriously.
Yeah.
You're allowed to do that. You don't have to have several degrees to let yourself speak that way. Because I remember the idea I had for one of my studies in grad school. I had that idea when I was third year of undergrad. And I walked into grad school and said, "Here's an idea I have." So you're allowed to do that.
Did you end up studying it?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh.
So yeah, you might find yourself doing that very project that you're thinking of right now.
I hope so, because I think it's like obesity and world health is something that it genuinely troubles me greatly. It's the kind of thing where I'll like walk down the street and like nearly in tears because it's just like fuck, like we're fucked, and everyone
Yeah.
seems to be getting worse, and it makes me feel so pessimistic about the world. Like,
Yeah.
God, nothing gets to me. Like, I don't know why. Like, I don't like. There's no like obesity or diabetes or anything in my family like that. It's just, we're all pretty healthy, but it's just like I don't know what it is. It just feels like all medical practitioners end up basically fixing the results of a shitty like health, and it's like that's why I'm doing podiatry, and podiatry, in my view, ends up fixing a lot of the things that obesity and metabolic diseases cause. And it's just like it's like you're running an uphill battle. Why not fix it six steps down the track where they
Yeah.
just ate too many cheeseburgers? It's like that's the thing. It's
Yeah.
so like so simple, but I guess it's obviously not.
Yeah, it's tricky. So the question is, what role does hypertrophy and I guess even more broadly body composition in general kind of have with long-term health? When it comes to hypertrophy, when you look at the aging literature, the loss of muscle mass and function, and the two often tend to not perfectly correlate, but they tend to go hand in hand, especially with aging. We see muscle mass goes down, muscle function goes down. And one of the things that really threatens quality of life in older individuals is losing the muscle function required to maintain independence. Okay, so the amount of muscle function required to do activities of daily living independently. And when you can no longer do those things, that's when you have to start looking into more invasive kind of approaches to having care around the house, or even living in an inpatient unit where there are caretakers present. So I think for a lot of people who are young, the idea would be you'd like to delay, requiring that assistance as long as you could. I think the ideal scenario would be to live as independently as you can, as long as you can, while still enjoying your quality of life. I think that's kind of the goal. And I think hypertrophy plays a role in that. I think strength training in general. I've always told people, whenever I'm done competing in bodybuilding, am I still going to do a billion sets of curls a week? Almost certainly not. But am I still going to deadlift and squat and make sure I'm loading my spine? Of course I am. I think as I age, my training will focus a lot less on appearance and more on maintaining day-to-day function. And so things like squat and like deadlift and like single leg exercises, I think those become increasingly critical when it comes to independence as we age. Now, the other side of the coin is not just having muscle and strength, but also body composition on the other end. So keeping excess fat tissue at a minimum. And again, certainly, once I'm done competing in bodybuilding, I never want to be 5% body fat again, ever. It's horrible. I don't like it. I don't feel like I look good. Like, common misconception. People think bodybuilders are like narcissistic. Like, when I'm in shape, wow, I look incredible. I look sick when I'm in shape. This is not, I'm not like looking around, like walking around thinking, yeah, I'm looking pretty good now. I'm getting a lot of good attention here. Absolutely not. So my training will probably change as I age, but also like it's not about bulking and cutting. It's about living your life and trying to make sure you don't have excess adiposity that's going to potentially affect your long-term health outcomes. So keeping an eye on weight as we age and trying to keep it within a manageable, because like you said, it's very hard once we get to a spot where we've lost function or we have a ton of excess adiposity. It's very hard to undo that. It's a lot easier to prevent it. So I think, if there's one mark that you can make on this public health approach, it's to convince people when they're still young, when they still don't have that excess adiposity, the additional fat mass, convincing them that a little bit of prevention now is going to be a lot easier than trying to undo things in the future. Because weight loss is really, really, really hard. And that's the thing is I think it's about compassion, right? Like when you say, walking around, it brings a bit of kind of sadness of, people who have, impaired function due to lack of training or excess adiposity. It's not a judgmental thing, and it's not an appearance thing. Like that's got nothing to do with it. And I think we need to get away from that idea of stigmatizing it or making people feel bad about it. But from an empathetic, compassionate viewpoint, the idea is if we can help people prevent the loss of function and the accretion of excess adiposity, they're going to have so many more quality years in their lifespan where they're independent, they feel great, they have energy, they can do the things they love to do. So I do hope you pursue that, and you shouldn't be nervous about boldly stating that. But yeah, hypertrophy certainly plays a role in that. Training plays a role in just simply having energy expenditure, let alone the effects on muscle function. And then on the diet side of things, trying to prevent excess adiposity. And like you said, it should in theory be kind of easy, but it's not. One of the things that's really tricky is that looking at people as human beings, not as, biological test subjects. Most things we do for fun are marked with, at least in the culture I kind of grew up in, are marked with some kind of food or beverage intake. You think of a holiday and you immediately think of like 3 foods and 2 drinks that go with that holiday. and so that's another thing is trying to work moderation into it and trying to adjust social activities when you are on a weight loss phase. It's not an easy thing.
Yeah, completely. Because it is everything. Like, food is everywhere, and pretty much everything you do involves food. And one thing that I find very hard about it is I've never struggled with weight. I struggle to put on weight, and I eat like shit a lot of the time. Like, we did a thing in my university the other day, like in class, where we're sitting there and we're talking about diet and exercise, and I mean, I could go on a whole nother rant about that because they did not mention calories on the whole slide about treating obesity, which I thought was fucking ridiculous. But that's another thing. But we went over our diets, and it was sort of me compared to someone else because I'm very loud in the class. I'm very loud about obesity and bodybuilding and all that sort of stuff. I have a lot of opinions around that, and so obviously I was like a good person to say, okay, let's do James and let's do someone else. And the other person's meal was like, okay, quinoa, blah, blah, blah. Like, very typical healthy stuff. And then mine was like, it was a really bad day. I mean, it was a great example to use as a contrast, but it was like three burgers from Burger King. That's like McDonald's. You would have that in the States, eh? Yeah. And then like,
oh yeah, we got Burger King.
Yeah, like ice cream.
Flame broiled.
And then it's just like there was so much bad shit on there. The only redeeming thing was like whey, kind of, and then like some yogurt. Like, it's all like protein yogurt, whey. But in reality, like, I think I'm pretty healthy. Like, measured my blood glucose every time I measure it, it's fine. Haven't measured my cholesterol or anything, but I think I'm fine. That might not be the case though. But like, I'm a lean individual, lift weights 5 times a week, but it's like, I don't know. I find it very, very hard to relate and very hard to... I think that's maybe why I find it so difficult, because it's like, shit, how do these people how does, like, I don't know what percent of the population have such an issue with this. It's like, it's so difficult for them. It is like the biggest challenge in their life. And it's like, and then they still think, like, there's these 2 dudes in my gym and I think they're trying to lose weight and get into that. And at the first time they walked in the gym, they looked sort of like they didn't feel comfortable there whatsoever. And then the other day I was like, and I was trying to do flies with like the sort of cuffs, so you attach them to your elbows or all that sort of stuff. Yeah. And it's really difficult to actually get yourself in there. So I like got myself in there, and I realized they couldn't get out. So I was like basically strapped in there, and then I just like talked to them. I was like, hey guys, would you be able to like help me get out of this shit? And it was like, even just talking to them, like, it made them feel like they just look more comfortable, because now it's like they realize the meatheads don't just hate them or whatever. It's like we were in the exact same position, and it's like, that's the thing. Like, I wish he would kind of understand that. Like, the gyms are pretty much never a judgmental environment, and the people who are judging aren't the people who actually matter. It's like, you'll go to a gym that's like 24 hours. Like, I think Planet Fitness would probably be your version of this, and there'll be like the dickhead meathead who just like slams weights, has no respect, doesn't do anything properly, like, and it's typical in every gym, and I think it's pretty notorious. It's like, those are the guys that you shouldn't give a fuck about. But it's like, and maybe that's all too common, but that's the thing. It's like, I feel like people are scared to just walk into a damn gym or whatever, like, go for a run because they're not good enough or fast enough. It's like, how do you get fast? By running. So it's like,
yeah, it's relatable. I mean, you can understand why,
yes.
Anytime you've entered an environment where there are people who have a lot of proficiency in whatever's going on and you don't, you're immediately kind of on edge. You know, you're kind of looking around like, okay, well, I hope nobody's looking at me, and if they are, how stupid do I look? So like, I think that the biggest challenge is, first of all, people who know what they're doing in the gym need to be intentionally welcoming. Not weird about it, but be polite.
Just be nice. Like, if someone's doing something wrong, just tell them nicely. Don't go up and be like, "Hey, bro." Like, just it seems relatively straightforward.
Yeah, and I've taken the position over the years of just never giving advice if not asked.
Yes,
and I think sometimes that's a good approach.
Yeah.
But I mean, so, and if you're that person who kind of is in the gym and you don't understand, or you're like trying to understand or get a better feeling for why people might be uncomfortable, do what I did. And that is go salsa dancing. with somebody who knows how to salsa dance and you do not. So I immediately knew how people feel in that situation because I was out at this event where it was all salsa dancing. I was the only person there who didn't know how to salsa dance. I probably looked like an idiot. Nobody like made fun of me to my face. And mean to me, everybody was like, "Oh, that's nice, he's trying." But no, I get it though. It's uncomfortable. You feel silly. You feel like all eyes are on you. So I would challenge people who maybe struggle to empathize with that to put yourself in a situation where everyone else around you is a lot more proficient than you, and you'll kind of understand that feeling, So I think the biggest thing of making the gym more inviting to people is that we have to actually intentionally be a little more humble,
Yes.
and a little bit more openly accepting of people, openly making sure people feel like they're comfortable. And if that concept bothers you, I think you should consider why. That seems like a pretty harmless thing of just like don't actively try to intimidate people, don't try to make people feel self-conscious. That should be like a general rule that's not very controversial.
And I mean, if it's just the kind of thing that's like, why don't you just like smile at them, just say hi, like it doesn't cause any damage, like especially like if you're in a similar demographic as them. It's like whenever I see like a skinny teenage dude, it's like I know exactly how he feels. They're always wearing like baggy clothes, trying to hide in it, and they're just going up to the machines because they're very timid. And so like you just say hi, like whatever, and it's just like it's not like there's no judgmental hi that you just whatever, like even just don't be a dickhead. It's like it should be that like, and I feel like most people aren't, but then there's just a small minority that just want to like be dickheads. And it's just like,
I think you're right. I think it's a small minority of people that, really enjoy kind of making people feel uncomfortable in the gym. And they're not doing it on purpose. They are wanting the attention. And I think a lot of the things that go along with that are what make others uncomfortable, kind of as it's not the intention, but it's the product of kind of a byproduct of that. So when they're, doing the loud grunting and slamming the weights and kind of, stomping around and that's fine. Like I don't have any problem with that. I just, it'd be nice if people were a little bit more cognizant of like, if I'm doing this and is this appropriate in this type of gym? And am I going out of my way such that it might actually make someone a little bit uncomfortable for no reason? Yeah. So like, I mean, I tell you what, man, if you're at a gym where that's, there's kind of an understanding, that's like, this is our gym. It's pretty
before your bench press. Like,
yeah, absolutely. Like, go for it. I mean, that's fun. I trained at a gym like that. I did it. It was fun. We had a good time. And it was a nitty gritty gym with log presses and chains and tires and hammers. Yeah. You could go crazy in there, and we loved it. And not everybody was in great shape, but everybody knew this is the kind of gym where that happens. Yes. And we're all going to support each other, and it's going to be pretty cool. Yeah.
And then it's like you compare that to my gym where it's like a gym where a lot of old people go, because I think they do it for rehabilitations and they sort of go there and they've been given prescription like exercise plans, and it's like they don't want to hear you slam the weight and then I get when you're trying to perform on a set. Like when I'm on leg press, I find it incredibly fucking hard to be quiet. Like I can't. If one time it was a joke, it was like, okay, James, we're gonna sit here for your whole set of leg press, and let's try and have you make no noises. And it was just like, fuck, it was hard. I don't know.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah, but it's just, and then it's like, but if you like go before your set and you're like screaming like, yeah, bitch, let's go. It's like, come on, like, I get it, but it's like, especially if you're a bodybuilder, it's like, I get it, kind of get it for powerlifting. It's like, but it's just the.
Yeah, I mean, there's like a really big dude at my gym he's in fantastic shape, and he should be very happy about that. Like, not taking anything away from him at all. But he does like to sing along with his music, quite audibly. And a lot of the lyrics are they are very objectionable lyrics. Yeah. And like you could just tell like I'm fine with it. It's pretty hard to like get under my skin, but
Yeah.
I'm also like, you're probably making a lot of people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
With
It's
just like
there's a
some
guy
of
at my
the
gym
some of
that
the
says the
words that
same
you're
thing.
saying that everyone can hear are like pretty shocking. So
Yeah.
maybe,
There's this
maybe,
dude, and is it like rap music? Because there's this guy at my gym. He's like fucking jacked as shit. Like, holy fuck. But he walks around, doesn't speak to a single person. He's got his headphones on. Every now and then, he'll just be doing a shit. Then all of a sudden, he'll just say something. And it's like, you'd think he's talking to you. And then he's like, something about trap money bitches or some shit. Like, it's something
so I
like
mean,
that.
I don't know the genre of music because all I know is the words, and the words are they're pretty intimidating.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Just stuff like that. It's like, okay, you're not even doing your set. Like, I kind of get it when you're doing your set. Like, it's pretty understandable. Like, it's hard to be quiet when you're doing an RPE9. It's like, that's fair enough. But, like, when you're just walking around or doing your cardio, you shouldn't be, like, saying shit like that. It's just like,
Yeah,
maybe
and
no
you
one's in
can
the gym.
tell, like, if somebody's just like trying to get out of the hole of a really deep squat and they let a little grunt out,
Yeah,
that's just part of doing
that's
business.
fair enough.
you
Yeah.
know? That's how that works.
Yeah.
If somebody drops weights loudly because they tried to control their deadlift on the way down, but it's really damn heavy,
Yeah. Fair
that's
enough.
what happens.
Yeah.
We're in the gravity business,
yeah.
so that's fine. But yeah, I just think it would be ideal if you go into a gym situation, everybody had a little self-awareness to think of how their actions might make others feel, and just went into the environment in good faith, thinking, I'm coming here to train, not to intimidate anybody, not to make anybody feel uncomfortable, I mean, it's not even that, it's just not to disrupt anybody.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And so it's just having some self-awareness, know what kind of room you're in, and react accordingly. That's like 99% of interacting in any social situation, right? Know who you are, know what room you're in, and try to be cool.
And know
And so
what,
if
like,
everybody
makes
did
people
that,
not, just make what makes people comfortable. Like, you don't have to go out of your way if you don't want to, but like, don't make people uncomfortable just by your existence. It's like, come on, like, just because you're a big guy, I think maybe take the, like, I think when I'm wearing something that's a bit like, I look like a gym bro, I try and be extra nice to sort of offset that, because it's like, okay, I'm wearing a stringer or I'm wearing a cutoff where I look fucking jacked. It's like, okay,
yeah,
if I'm talking to anyone, like, just be a little nicer. Like, just add a little bit, like.
yeah, and my perspective is like I get it. Like when you're a bodybuilder and you're close to contest shape, your workout can be more enjoyable when you can kind of see your physique as you're working out.
Yeah.
Is that a little bit shallow or narcissistic? I don't know. I'm not a psychologist, but I know it's a thing.
Yeah.
And so, like, my thing is, there's nothing wrong with that, as long as you're not, wearing your stringer, lats flared the entire workout and just staring into the eyes of someone who's clearly not comfortable and is clearly like, okay, I'm a little bit intimidated. Like,
Yeah.
it's a very different thing if you're getting all up in people's business, if you're staring them down, if you're
That's
staring
fucked up, like,
staring at people, maybe that you're attracted to in the gym and being weird.
that is really
just don't do
fucked
weird
up.
things.
Yeah.
Don't do intimidating
Especially
things. Chill.
with women in the gym. It's like, you should pretty much never talk to a woman in the gym. Okay, one time I thought that I did it was acceptable is they had like Vibram 5-finger shoes, and I was like, hey, where'd you get those shoes? What are your thoughts on them? And I was like, okay, thanks for your opinion. Like, I appreciate that conversation. Enjoy your workout. And then you just leave. You don't like. I don't think people should ever hit on girls in gyms. It's just like, come on, like, that's like the number one reason girls don't want to go to the gym. It's just like,
and
fuck.
it's not never talk to women or whoever you're attracted to. It's not never talk to them. It's just talk to them as if they're a person, if you're not trying to get anything out of this. Like, don't make every conversation be like, hey, nice shoes, how do they work? Also, can I have your number? Like, that's just not the place where that goes on. So just like talk to women, talk to men, talk to people, but just be a person. Don't be weird and creepy.
Yeah. That's the thing. Like, I mean, I think most guys get that, but there's a small minority that think, nah, like, whatever. Like, it's a conversation. Like, fuck off. Like, come on. Like, it's just common sense, I think, which is the kind of, it's the thing. I don't know. It pisses me off so much because so many of my female friends just, they don't want to go to a gym, and whenever they do, they feel physically uncomfortable. It's just like, come on. Like, my girlfriend, every time she goes to the gym, she'll say, like, okay, there's this dude, like, staring at me. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
She goes to a pretty, like, Planet Fitnessy sort of gym, but it's just
Yeah.
like, come on, like, fuck off. Like, it's just unacceptable. It's just like, why? Why do you have to do that? Do you really think it's going to work? Like, fuck no, it's not. That's not going to get you jack shit. Like, just...
Yeah, I used to, the best way to cure that, when I was in college, every now and then I would work out in this basement that I think the university just forgot it existed, honestly.
Yeah.
I would go down, like, there was no staff at any time.
Yeah.
And the door was like, I think it was like a key card access, but it was just an empty room full of a bunch of barbells and weights and stuff.
Man.
So they must have just forgotten that it existed. But I would go down there and there'd be nobody around.
Fuck.
And it just get the most killer workouts.
That's
it was great.
fantastic. Holy shit.
One time I almost got completely stapled to the
Oh,
bench.
fuck that. No. Fucking no.
It was like super late night, and I had like 315 pounds on the bench. I forget how many kilos that is, but yeah, I misgrooved it on my second rep, and I like, actually, it was the only time in my life to this day I had a genuine fight or flight response. And I like got the bar, like I misgrooved it, got it to my sticking point, and it was like, that thing ain't going up. And I like actually thought like I might die under this thing.
Oh shit.
And I swear it weighed 315 pounds. It could have weighed 500. That weight would have gone up. I had this like superhuman surge of strength from just the sheer panic. And yeah, that was the only time in my life, because I was like, it's like, I think it was like 1 or 2 in the morning.
Oh shit.
No one around. Like,
Fuck
I would have
no.
woken up under that bar if I had the fortune of waking up. but yeah, so that was the ideal scenario for the gym, as long as you don't misgroove heavy benches, then you're fine.
Fuck no. No, that sounds like that's the kind of gym that I'd love to sort of go in. Like, have you seen 3DMJ Godfather? Like, his gym is just, I'd love to go to somewhere like that. Or there's this,
Jeff Alberts?
Yeah, Jeff Alberts, yeah.
Yeah, he's awesome, man.
Yeah.
He's a legend.
Yeah, he is just such a cool dude. Like, oh god. And like,
I love how chill he is about bodybuilding.
yeah.
That's the way it's supposed to be.
And he's just so jacked, but he's just like, yeah, just depositing pennies, like, you know, it's cool. Like, and it's like the whole crew at 3DMJ is just like fantastic. Speaking of, do you think there's any like, is there any companies and sort of maybe products or people that you would be fine saying like, yep, go follow them?
Well, as you know, I work for Stronger by Science now, and if anyone spends money on a company other than ours, it makes me very upset. So come to us for all of your needs and nobody else. No, I mean, like, there's so many good people in fitness, and there's oftentimes, like, I handle the applications for our coaching program, and there's a lot of times where people say, oh, I'm shopping around, and I go, do it. Like, there's a lot of good coaches out there. I don't view it as like a scarcity thing of like, you know, there's 19 clients in the world, we all got to fight over them. The same thing goes with content. There's a lot of good content out there. People that I usually look up to and really lean on, Eric Helms at 3DMJ is incredible. Love that guy. Peter Fitchin's great. Lane Norton, obviously. I mean, I've been following Lane since, God, like day one of being interested in this stuff. Now I'm nervous that I'm going to forget somebody. I love Jeff Nippard. He does an excellent job with his podcast and YouTube channel. Yeah, so it's Helms, Norton, Fitchin. I'm certain that I'm blanking on people. Oh, the team over at Renaissance Periodization, they do good work. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people putting out a lot of good content, and you know, there's so much bad stuff in fitness that, like, if you view the other people doing good work as your enemy, like, that's not good for anybody.
I completely
like,
agree. It's like
we're all on the same team here, which is, let's try to rely a little bit more on objective evidence. Let's try to integrate that into our practice, integrate that into our content that we're putting out. And yeah, if you're at least making an honest effort to make your content more objective, more evidence driven, and you're not trying to swindle people and you're not trying to put out misinformation, then you're on my team,
completely
So
agree.
yeah, are there people I forgot? Who else is good out there?
I mean, I personally love Revive Stronger. Absolutely fantastic.
Yes,
I mean, he's
absolutely.
lesser known,
Yeah.
but he's my coach and just fantastic dude. Like, obviously, the whole team there, Pascal, Ryan, all those people, and Miguel, absolutely fantastic. Like, they are just amazing. That's probably that's sort of the, one people know less, but I think they should know, and they'll probably rise to prominence very, very fast. And obviously, Renaissance, 3DMJ. Do you know JPS?
Yeah, when you mentioned Revive Stronger, it reminded me also JPS. They're also very good.
Yeah, they are fantastic. Like, I think those sort of 5-6 companies, also Stronger by Science, is like, it's just like you cannot get better than that. It's just why would you ever go and watch like shitty YouTube videos when you have that? It's just like, it puzzles me. But I guess it's harder to digest because it's more complex usually. But then even like it's distilled better as well. So it's just like,
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of another getting all the way back full circle. It's like, I love doing academic work. As a PhD student, I was a pure academic. I was all in on it. Was certain I would be a professor, and I would have a great time as a professor. I'll probably do it someday. You know what I mean? But when I was coming out of the PhD, it was such a hard decision because I've always thought of myself as being, I'll be a professor for sure. It'll be fun. And I still feel that way. But there's this new area of fitness where there's this, it embraces this idea of we want people who really do it, who train hard, who lift heavy, who compete, who are in the trenches, to use a cliche, but who also have an appreciation of the more evidence-based approach. It's like now more than ever, there's this little area where if you have if you like making content, if you like the science and you like applying it, now there's this little avenue that people can pursue. And there's a lot of really good people in that area. And it's basically the list of people we just mentioned.
Yeah.
So
there's tons more, and there's tons more coming.
Yeah,
it's just like, and the field is so open now. It's like you don't need to have a degree. Like Steve, he doesn't have a degree, but he's still like top in the field. Fantastic. It's just like,
Sure.
It's just like there's so much in evidence-based fitness that you can go and.
Ooh, and we forgot Danny Lennon. His podcast is awesome.
Yes.
He gets some really good people in there.
He's someone who I quite look up to. He's just crushing it.
Yeah, he's also a shockingly good interviewer. He is like, I remember I was on his podcast like a million years ago. I hung up the call and I was just like, damn, he was good at that. He's like a next, like he knows the science, but he's like a next level. Like he's really good at what he does,
That's
So
the sort of level that I want to sort of ascend to. It's just like, geez, him and like Joe Rogan, fantastic. It's just like,
yeah.
I mean, Joe Rogan's not obviously evidence-based whatsoever, but he tries, but it's like, yeah, his level of interviewing skill is phenomenal.
He's good at interviewing. He's interesting. He's funny, and he at least uses his platform to get evidence-based people to the table.
Yes, I agree.
Not always. You could say, well, but sometimes he offers his platform to people who maybe don't know what they're talking about, and that's a fair criticism. But at the end of the day, the more we have people who are good at this stuff, who are getting an opportunity to at least get a seat at the table. Yeah. I mean, it's really, I tell you what, like I kind of had when I was pretty certain, like I'm going to do the professor thing straight out of college or straight out of the PhD. I pretty much like just focused in on very narrow aspects of the fitness industry in terms of what I stayed up to date with and who I followed and things like that. And I almost kind of had convinced myself that was the entirety of the fitness industry.
Right.
And I looked the other day and I was like, okay, who's a person that I think has a huge following in what I consider the fitness industry? And I would look at their following And then you look at like these people that have 10, even 100 times the size of that following. And you're just like, man, I forgot that there was this whole other side of fitness that gets so much more access in terms of their platform, and such a greater ability to put out information, and the information's just not that good. And so it's nice when people with an enormous platform like Joe Rogan, at least in some episodes, are giving evidence-based people a platform so that people who are putting out really, really good content can start cutting through the noise from some of these bigger fitness personalities that maybe aren't putting out very good information. That's the most diplomatic way I could put it.
Yeah, because it's like, otherwise they don't really get to have a big say. It's like, like when he had Lane on, it was fantastic. It was just like so damn good. And it's just, like, actually giving someone like Lane a platform is like fantastic. Like, obviously he's got a massive platform, but it's like giving him a platform at Joe Rogan level, it's like, fuck yeah. And like Andy Galpin, it's like, it's just that is like, I would love to see like Helms on there. That would be insane. Like, I think it'd be very, very interesting. And I think they would have a lot to talk about, which would be cool. Mission get Helms on Joe Rogan.
Yeah, no, that would be awesome. I'd love to see that.
Yeah. And I think it's the kind of thing where he does a fantastic job at it. I mean, yeah, I agree. He does have some really shitty guests on, but it's like the majority, I'd say 90%, 95% are fantastic. It's just like, and I've discovered so many amazing things through his platform, and maybe it's biased, but it's like there's a lot of shit. He does have objective discussions that are fair. It's like, I can't remember who it was the other day. It was Gary Taubes and someone else, and
Stefan.
Yes.
DNA.
Yes, and it was just a fantastic discussion. It's like, whenever someone's being a dick in the discussion, he says, "Hey, no, let him speak." It's just like, that's the kind of thing that I think is very important. It's like, how can we get anywhere without that? Like, we kind of need to have that, and we need to have fairness in discussion. We can't just be like, okay, no, this person's right, so we just bully them from the start. It's like, why not give everyone a sort of voice?
Yeah, and I have to partially plead a little bit of ignorance here. I don't follow Joe Rogan's podcast a ton, but I have, there have been instances recently where people that are notable in fitness have been on there. Yeah. And so in those instances, I actually do chime in. So I have no idea what percentage of his episodes have like really good content, what percentage is not. But I do know that there have been at least a few occasions where that episode has kind of earned my viewership because it's opened up to people who are doing good work.
Yeah, and it's crazy how big it's getting. It's like, it's just showing how crazy podcasts can get. And I think that's sort of the one that everyone's trying to not emulate, but sort of everyone's like, holy shit. Like, like, how the fuck does he do that? Which I think is cool.
Yeah, and Greg and I'm going to plug my own work here. Greg and I actually are starting a podcast.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, Stronger by Science podcast. We are, I think, recording our first full episode in about 2 days, I think. So I don't know how long it'll take to get it up and when we're going to start actually making them available. But we are going to throw our hat in the ring, and all your listeners should prioritize your podcast. But if they have any extra time, ours should be coming out soon.
Very excited for that. That is definitely one I'll chuck on my list. So where else can people find you? Where can people find Stronger by Science and everything Eric Trexler?
Yeah, so the home base, the website is strongerbyscience.com. That's where you can find our articles. And you can find things about our coaching program. A lot of people basically didn't know that we have a whole team of really good coaches. So if you're in the market for a coach, we've got some. Our articles tend to be, we don't do the thing where we put out like a little clickbait, 1-page article and say, hey, here's something. They take time, they take effort. So when we put something out, we have a lot of pride in it. So we always love when people check it out. If you leave comments on the articles, we spend a lot of time answering those comments. I'm also on Facebook, just as my name, Eric Trexler. I'm not important enough to have the the athlete public figure page. Twitter is at Eric Trexler, and Instagram is at Trexler Fitness. So that's where you can find me for now. And
anything else you'd like to plug? Any upcoming projects? Any other things?
Well, I did release a huge article today. I don't know when this episode will go live, but we just released an article on metabolic adaptation to weight loss. So if you've ever tried to get lean and found out that it's a little harder than it looks, the article is 22,000 words exploring just about everything you'd want to know about dieting. I think it might be as long as my dissertation now that I think about it. So it's long. But it's good. I mean, I'm very proud of it. I'm not going to lie. Normally when I do something, I'm like, it's fine, but I'm pretty proud of that one. And then in the near future, we should have a pretty cool article coming out about how dietary supplements are regulated, because that's a lot of people have a lot of questions about that. So just keep an eye on the website. We always have stuff coming out.
Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of the Student Side Hustle. I would appreciate so much if you would leave a review if you'd like to hear more of what I'm saying. Then I would love if you would follow me on Instagram or check out my other social media, all linked in the show notes. And again, I would just like to say thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful evening and study hard.